Okay, let's dive right into this. Have you ever stopped to wonder how on earth we know about ancient kings or massive empires, or what life was really like for the very first humans? Well, it's not magic, and it's for sure not just guesswork. Today, we're basically going on an investigation to uncover the incredible stories of our past.
So that's the big question, isn't it? How can we be so confident about things that happened way before anyone we know was even born? I mean, before cameras, before the internet, before everything? Well, it turns out the past leaves clues behind, and it's our job to find them.
And this is where our history detectives come in. You know, people like historians and archaeologists, they don't just make up cool stories. They use really careful, systematic methods, literally digging into the earth and poring over ancient texts to find real, tangible evidence that tells us what actually went down.
Now, what's so great about this is the why. I mean, why do all this digging in the first place? This quote from E.H. Carr absolutely nails it. We study the past not just for fun facts, but because it helps us understand who we are today and how our world got to be the way it is. It's like a conversation that just never, ever ends. So, you ready to become a history detective? For this first part, we're going to join the investigation and learn the basic skills that every great detective needs to start solving the mysteries of the past. Let's go.
Every detective needs a toolkit, right? And for a history detective, the most important tools are the sources. All the different kinds of clues that the past leaves behind for us to find and figure out.
And check this out. This mind map gives us the perfect big picture. We can pretty much group all these clues into four main categories: archaeological, literary, oral, and artistic. Now, each one gives us a unique window into the past, but the real magic, that happens when they all start to work together.
First up, the physical stuff. Archaeologists study material remains, the actual objects people made, used, and then left behind. A single ancient coin like this can tell us who was in charge, what they cared about, and even who they were trading with. It's amazing. Sometimes we'll find an object and then, years later, discover a written text that explains exactly what it was used for. Next, we've got literary sources. These are awesome because they're written accounts that can give us a direct peek into people's thoughts. But a good detective is always a little skeptical, right? Think about it. If you were writing about a soccer game your team just won, you'd probably focus on all the amazing goals you scored. Someone from the other team, they might write a very different story. That's bias. And historians always have to remember these texts were written by real people with their own points of view. But hold on a second. What about all the societies that didn't write everything down? See, not all history is found in books. Oral sources, the stories, the songs, the traditions passed down from one generation to the next are incredibly important. They're like a living library preserving a culture's memories and values where no written record even exists.
And last but not least, we have artistic sources. A cave painting or a super detailed sculpture can show us what people believed, what they looked like, or what animals they saw every day. Art can be like a snapshot from the past, and sometimes it confirms details we've only heard about in ancient stories or texts. It's another piece of the puzzle.
Okay, so we've collected all our clues from those four categories. But just finding them is only half the battle. Now comes the really clever part, figuring out what it all means and piecing together the full story, especially when the clues don't seem to agree.
Okay, check out this classic detective problem. You find two different literary sources talking about the same king, but they paint completely different pictures. Source A, an inscription the king paid for himself, says he's a hero. But source B, a text from his enemies, calls him a tyrant. So, who do you believe?
This is exactly why historians never ever rely on just one clue. They treat the whole thing like a giant jigsaw puzzle. They compare sources and they ask really critical questions. Who wrote this and why? Do the archaeological finds, like the ruins of a city he supposedly built or maybe destroyed, support one story over the other? By cross-referencing all the different types of evidence, they can build a much more accurate and complete picture.
So we've figured out how detectives find clues and piece them together. But to really solve a case, you also have to understand the timeline. So now let's talk about when things happened. And seriously, prepare to have your mind blown by just how huge the scale of human existence really is.
300,000 years. Just let that number sink in for a second. That is how long modern humans, our species, have been on this planet. It is an almost unimaginable stretch of time. And this timeline really puts it all into perspective. For the vast, vast majority of our 300,000-year history, we were hunter-gatherers. I mean, look how recently farming started, and even more recently, writing was invented.
So all those literary sources we just talked about, they only cover the last teeny tiny slice of the whole human story.
This right here is one of the biggest plot twists in human history. On one side, you've got life in small, nomadic bands of hunter-gatherers, always on the move. And on the other, you have settled villages and farms. So how did this massive transformation even happen?
Well, it all started with climate change. As the last ice age ended, the world got a lot warmer. This new environment made it possible to actually grow crops and domesticate animals. So for the first time, people didn't have to constantly move to find food. They could settle down. Villages grew, and with them came entirely new ways of living. Trade, leaders, new inventions, the whole shebang.
So, as we start to wrap up, it's so important to remember this. History isn't some dusty old book that was written once and is now closed forever. Nope, it's an ongoing investigation, and the story is always evolving with every single new clue we uncover.
And speaking of investigations, let's clear up something that trips people up all the time. Archaeologists and paleontologists, they both dig in the ground, sure, but they're looking for totally different things. Archaeologists focus on the human past by studying our artifacts. Paleontologists study fossils to understand prehistoric life, like dinosaurs. Both are history detectives just working on different cases.
All right, so let's do a quick recap of our detective's toolkit. First, remember that our understanding of history is built from 4 different kinds of evidence. Second, a good detective always compares sources to get closer to the real story. Third, the human story is just mind-bogglingly long. And finally, and this is probably the most important one, it's a story that is constantly being updated with every new discovery.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. Somewhere out there, maybe buried under the ground or hidden away in a forgotten manuscript, there's a clue that could change everything we think we know about the past. What do you think it could be? The investigation continues.